Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the In Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Redoute, aka That Michigan Guy on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. First of all, thank you to everyone who's left a review on this podcast. I very much appreciate it, and for following. We're building up a lot of episodes here, so stay tuned for more on Michigan, Michiganders, things to do, events, experiences, the whole gambit. But without further ado, let's dive into our Q&A session that we're going to have for today's podcast episode. From which part of Michigan do people have the strongest accent? Good question. I think that it really tends to vary by location. So in the Upper Peninsula, I think they have a little bit more Wisconsin influence, same with the west side of the state, because technically in the UP, most of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is above Wisconsin. So you're going to get that mix of Wisconsinites and Michiganders. But I would say people on the east side or people in Metro Detroit have a little bit of New Yorker influence, a little Canadian influence. And I actually talk about the influence of people coming from New York to Michigan and why we all kind of have that New Yorker twang to our accents. So I would say it definitely varies. What is my favorite Michigan food? Okay, I'm thinking about food that is like classic Michigan. I would say Coney dogs from Coney Island have to be on my list. Pasties, definitely. I didn't like pasties growing up, but I didn't grow up eating them like a true Michigander, but having them as an adult, I'm like, these are delicious, especially with the gravy and everything. So pasties and Coney dogs for sure. Speaking of pasties, is it pasty or is it pasty? Which actually brings up a very funny memory of mine, because on our first trip to the Upper Peninsula, that was the first time we saw these signs that said pasties, pasties, however you want to say it. I think it's pasties, obviously, because pasties, as my mom called it out in the car on our road trip, was something a little different. Now, how I would describe a pasty for somebody who is in Michigan who hasn't had one before, or someone outside of Michigan, I would say it's like a meat and veggie filled pocket of something. It's pretty big, it's like this big, and you can also get chicken or beef gravy to put on top. It's actually really delicious. What is your favorite Coney Island? There's a lot of different brands out there, a lot of different chains. I would say that throughout my life that Leo's Coney Island has been the most prevalent. There's one in Royal Oak, Michigan. There's one in East Lansing when I was in college. That's the go-to Metro Detroit one. I feel a lot of people go to that one. And honestly, any Coney Island that is open 24 hours and I don't have to think about when they close, and I can just get takeout, some fries, a honey, the lemon soup, whatever I want, I would say is a good Coney. I didn't want to admit this, but I've actually never been to the Lafayette Coney in downtown Detroit that everyone knows. I've walked past it a lot, but I've not been inside. So stay tuned for a video from me in the future, or just a visit in general. What is the greatest Great Lakes beach town in Michigan? Honestly, there's so many good ones to choose from. Some of my favorites are Frankfort, which I've talked about in a In Michigan article, and you can go and see things to do, places to check out that I've made there. And honestly, I went to South Haven last summer. It was great. That's the one with the famous red lighthouse and pier that you've probably seen in a lot of Michigan photography. And then of course, Saugatuck, Michigan is also one of my favorites, so you have to go check them all out yourself. What is better in Detroit, Hamtramck or Greektown? So Hamtramck, I've been to soccer games at, gotten delicious bagels, went to cute coffee shops. It's very much a vibe and a little bit less touristy, versus Greektown is a little bit more touristy, I would say. I've gone to the Fishbones there, it's delicious. Gone to the Pegasus, it's amazing. Greektown has the casino, has a little bit more of that city energy to it, versus Hamtramck's a little bit more of that community energy. This one had to be my favorite. If you could own or operate your own tourist attraction in Michigan, what would it be? I would say I would make a competitor to the mystery spot in the UP called the Found Spot. No, I have to say that I would honestly go with one of my favorite experiences that I've done personally, which is this sailing experience in Saugatuck. I wouldn't obviously do it there, but I would try to find the most beautiful spot to do a sailing trip and just do sunset rides, romantic little getaway rides, things like that. Or I myself have not seen the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, and a lot of people in Michigan have. I would say I would go out, try to find the best spot, the best time to see it, almost guaranteed that people would see them, and I would make a tourist attraction around that and be the guide for them. But I know that means I'm going to be going to Copper Harbor in Michigan's Upper Peninsula to do that. Would you rather watch the Pistons win a championship or the Lions win a Super Bowl? I have to say that watching the Lions nearly make it to the Super Bowl, they were so close, was very exciting for me. And honestly, I don't normally get into watching sports. I love playing them. I don't like watching them typically, but I got into it. So I have to say Lions just because we came so close just this year that I want to see them do it next year. And it just like the energy around the city of Detroit was so amazing. Like everybody was just in on this thing that we all wanted to happen. So I just felt like there was a really strong bond that formed. You know, we have the NFL draft coming to Detroit very soon. I don't know what that means exactly because, again, don't watch sports that much, but I hope it means that we can get some players that will help us win it next year. Where does up north in Michigan officially begin? This question, people go back and forth. Michiganders can't agree on it, but I just saw this map from MLive, and I think it describes it the best in that up north is really different for all Michiganders depending on where you're at and where you're going. So for example, if I'm in Southeast Michigan like I am, going up north is going to be a lot shorter than someone maybe in Traverse City who goes to the UP. For me, up north has very much a vibe and has certain components. Like, is there a cottage or a cabin you're staying at? Is it by a lake? Did you pass a Jesus sign to get there? These things kind of help form the up north definition. Have I been to the Detroit Zoo? Absolutely. I grew up going to it. I went to it as an adult with my grandparents, with my nieces and nephews, and it's a great zoo. It's huge. You can spend a lot of time there, but pro tip, I've gone in like the more afternoon time where the sun's at its peak and it's the brightest, and not a lot of animals were out outside of like the bears and things like that, versus I've gone other times and feel like I've seen a lot of the animals. So if you want to go and see more of the animals, I suggest going like early morning or sunset where I feel like more of the animals would be out. During the day, they just want to nap. It's hot out. They don't want to be walking around. And that closes out our first Michigan Q&A. Thank you to everyone who submitted their questions for it. And if I put it on my Instagram stories again, I hope you submit a question. And like I said, I like the more creative ones, like what tourist attraction would you make in Michigan? Because it gets me thinking a little bit more. But go ahead and subscribe if you like this video, want to be notified when I release new episodes of the podcast here or just new videos in general. And I will see you all again.